Wyoming Territory, May 1884, 3 in the morning. Caleb Dunn stood in the barn with a crumpled letter in his hands and a match burning down to his fingers. The flame touched paper. The ink curled black, then white, then ash. He watched the words disappear, words from a man named Thomas Whitfield, words about a daughter nobody wanted. Pearl will not be coming. I am sending my other daughter instead. She is not beautiful, but she works. If you will not accept her, please return the $30. The ash drifted to the dirt floor. Caleb ground it under his boot heel until nothing remained but a dark smudge that could have been anything, could have been nothing. He walked to the stall where the white horse lived, the animal they called Ghost. It was watching him with eyes that held too much knowledge for a creature without words. Sarah's horse. His dead wife's horse. The last living thing she had touched before the earth took her. The horse did not approach. It never did. Not for Caleb. Not for anyone. Not since Sarah Dunn had fallen from its back 2 summers ago and broken her neck on the rocks below Widow's Ridge. Caleb pressed his forehead against the rough wood of the stall door. The horse shifted in the darkness beyond. Its breathing was the only sound besides his own. "She's coming anyway," he said to the animal, the other daughter, the one they didn't want to send. The horse made no reply. Caleb had known this Clara Whitfield would come. Had known since Thomas Whitfield's first letter arrived 3 weeks ago explaining the situation in language designed to soften the truth. Pearl was unavailable. Clara was willing. The arrangement could proceed. The money need not be returned. He should have refused. Should have sent the $30 back and told Thomas Whitfield to keep his unwanted daughter. But Caleb Dunn had learned something in his 35 years of living. He had learned that sometimes broken things fit together better than whole ones ever could. The match had burned down to his fingers. He dropped it, watched it die in the dirt beside the ashes of the letter. "We'll see," he told the horse. "We'll see what she's made of." The horse turned its back to him. Even in the darkness, its white hide seemed to glow like a ghost, like something already dead that refused to stay buried. Chapter 2. The Arrival. The stagecoach pulled into Buffalo Station at 2 in the afternoon. The sun was high and mean, turning the dirt of the main street into something that stuck to boots and lungs and the roofs of mouths. 6 passengers climbed down dusty and bent from 5 days of being shaken like seeds in a jar. Caleb saw her immediately. Not because she was beautiful. She was not. Not because she stood out. She did not. But because of the way she stood perfectly still while the other passengers rushed toward water and shade and the promise of solid ground beneath their feet. Clara Whitfield stood beside her trunk with her hands folded at her waist and her eyes scanning the platform like a woman preparing for disappointment. She wore a gray dress that had been mended at the collar. Her brown hair was pinned back in a style that suggested efficiency rather than vanity. Her face was angular, not harsh, but worn in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with the kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. She was 28 years old, according to her father's letter. She looked older. She looked like a woman who had already died once and was now moving through the world as a formality. Caleb stepped forward. His boots made no sound on the platform. She saw him when he was 10 feet away. Her eyes met his, gray eyes, the color of winter sky before snow. "Clara Whitfield." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Yes?" No hesitation, no flutter of uncertainty, just the single word delivered like a fact that required no decoration. "I'm Caleb Dunn." "I know." She did not smile, did not extend her hand, simply stood there waiting. He picked up her trunk. It was lighter than he expected, everything she owned reduced to 50 pounds of weight. He carried it to the wagon without looking back to see if she followed. She did. Her footsteps were quiet but steady. At the wagon he set the trunk in the bed and turned to help her up to the seat. She was already climbing one hand on the rail, one foot on the spoke. She settled onto the bench and arranged her skirts without fuss. Caleb climbed up beside her, released the brake. The horses moved forward and Buffalo Station fell behind. They rode in silence for a mile, then 2. The road narrowed from street to track, cutting through grassland that stretched toward mountains the color of gathering storms. The bighorns rose against the sky like the backbone of something too large to name. "Your father sent a letter," Caleb said. He felt her go still beside him. Not a flinch. Something deeper. A cessation of breath, perhaps. Or the sudden absence of whatever small movements living people make without knowing. "He told you?" 3 weeks ago." Caleb kept his eyes on the road. "Said Pearl couldn't come. Said you were willing." Another silence. This one lasted long enough for the wagon to cover a 1/4 mile. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Not louder or softer, just emptier. "You knew I wasn't Pearl." "Yes." "And you didn't refuse." "No." "Why?" Caleb considered lying, considered saying something about Christian charity or the difficulty of finding a wife in Wyoming Territory. Considered explaining that a man with 300 acres and a barn full of horses could not be particular about the shape of the woman who shared his table. But Clara Whitfield had not come this far to hear lies dressed in politeness. "Because I figured a woman willing to cross 5 states to marry a stranger she'd never met might understand what it means to want to be somewhere else." She turned to look at him then. He felt the weight of her gaze, but kept his own eyes forward. "Where did you want to be?" she asked. "Dead." The word came out flat and certain. "For about 3 years after the war. Figured if I couldn't manage that, at least I could get far enough west that nobody knew me. Did it work? Depends on the day." The wagon crested a small rise. Below them a valley opened up green in the places where water still ran brown, where the drought had already begun its work. A creek cut through the center, narrow and silver. Beyond the valley the mountains climbed toward sky. "I need to show you something," Caleb said, "before we get to the ranch." He turned the horses onto a smaller track that led east. Clara said nothing, asked nothing. Just sat beside him with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes on the horizon. The cemetery was small, 6 graves each, marked with a wooden cross or a pile of stones. A fence made of split rails surrounded the plot, keeping out nothing but giving the dead their own territory, separate from the living. Caleb stopped the wagon, climbed down, walked to the fence, and stood there looking at the second grave from the left. Clara climbed down on her own, came to stand beside him. Not close, but close enough that he could hear her breathing. The grave was marked with a white painted cross. The paint was peeling, showing gray wood beneath. Letters carved into the crossbar spelled out a name and 2 years. Sarah Dunn, 1857 to 1882, beloved wife. "She was my wife," Caleb said. "Married 4 years, dead 2. Clara studied the grave. Her face showed nothing. No surprise, no judgment, no pity. Just a careful attention, as if she were memorizing the shape of the mound and the way the grass grew thinner over the settled earth. "How?" The question was quiet. "Riding accident, she fell. Broke her neck. I'm sorry." "Are you?" He turned to look at her. "You didn't know her." "I don't have to know someone to be sorry they're dead." Clara's eyes moved from the grave to his face. "I know what it means to bury someone." Something in her voice made him pause. A resonance, a recognition of grief that went beyond polite condolence. "Who did you bury?" he asked. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, without looking away from Sarah's grave, she spoke. "My husband, my daughter, 4 years ago. Scarlet fever took them 3 days apart." Her voice stayed level, but her hands tightened on themselves. "Emma was 3 years old. I was holding her when she died. I felt her go cold. The air between them changed, became heavier, or perhaps lighter." Caleb could not tell. He only knew that something had shifted, like a door opening in a wall he had not known was there. "The room you'll sleep in was Sarah's room," he said. "I haven't changed anything. If you want to move things, you can." "I won't move anything." Clara turned back toward the wagon. "Ghosts need their space, same as the living." Caleb watched her walk away, watched the straight line of her spine and the careful placement of her feet on the uneven ground. She climbed back into the wagon and sat waiting, her hands folded again, her face turned toward the mountains. He took one last look at Sarah's grave. The wind moved the grass around it. Somewhere in the distance a hawk screamed. Then he climbed into the wagon beside this woman who spoke of ghosts like she knew them personally, and he drove toward the ranch where the dead still lived in every corner. Chapter 3. The House of Absence. The ranch sat in a fold of land where the mountains met the valley floor. The house was timber and stone built to withstand wind and winter and the weight of silence. Barn and outbuildings clustered near, forming a compound against the wilderness beyond. 300 acres stretched in all directions, marked by fences Caleb had built with his own hands post by post, year after year. He stopped the wagon in front of the house. Clara climbed down before he could offer assistance. She stood looking at the building with an expression he could not read. "It's solid," she said. "Built it myself. Took 2 years." After the war, after I stopped moving long enough to swing a hammer, he carried her trunk inside. The front room held a table, 4 chairs, a wood stove, and a shelf of books that no one had opened since Sarah died. Everything was clean because Caleb kept it clean. Everything was empty because emptiness could not betray you. "Kitchen's through there," he pointed. "Pumps out back. Privy's beyond the barn. Guest room is upstairs, second door." "Sarah's room?" "Yes." He set the trunk at the base of the stairs. Clara's hand rested on the banister. Her fingers were long and work-roughened. A widow's hands, a mother's hands that had held a dying child. "I'll show you," he said. He led her up the narrow stairs. The second door opened into a room that still smelled faintly of lavender. Sarah had loved lavender, had sewn sachets filled with it and tucked them into every corner. 2 years dead, and the scent remained. The room was exactly as Sarah had left it. The bed was made with a quilt she had stitched white and blue in a pattern called wedding ring. The wardrobe stood open, showing dresses that would never be worn again. A hairbrush rested on the dresser beside a hand mirror and a photograph in a silver frame. Clara walked to the dresser, picked up the photograph. It showed a young woman with light hair and a serious expression standing beside a white horse. "That's Ghost," Caleb said. "The horse, he was hers." Is. I haven't been able to sell him. Nobody can ride him. He won't let anyone close." Clara set the photograph down carefully, aligning it with the dust mark it had left on the wood. "Not even you. Especially not me." She turned to face him. The afternoon light from the window fell across her face, revealing fine lines at the corners of her eyes and a thinness to her features that spoke of meals skipped and sleep foregone. "Mr. Dunn?" "Caleb. Caleb." She said his name like she was testing its weight. "Why did you accept me? The real reason." He could have lied again, could have offered any number of plausible explanations, but this woman had buried a husband and child. This woman spoke of ghosts needing space. This woman stood in a dead wife's room without flinching. "Because I thought you might understand what it means to live in a house full of things that used to matter." He met her eyes. "And I thought maybe you wouldn't expect me to pretend they don't." Clara looked around the room, at the dresses in the wardrobe, at the lavender sachets, at the hairbrush that still held strands of Sarah's pale hair. "I won't pretend anything," she said. "I'm too tired for pretending." "Then we'll do fine." He left her there, went down to see to the horses and the evening chores. When he came back 2 hours later, Clara was in the kitchen. She had found flour and lard and salt. Biscuits were baking in the oven. Coffee was heating on the stove. She had rolled up her sleeves, revealing forearms marked with old scars he did not ask about. "You didn't have to cook," he said. "I know." She poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "But I need to eat, and you need to eat, and the biscuits won't make themselves." They ate in silence. The biscuits were good, better than good. When Caleb reached for a third, Clara's mouth moved in something that was not quite a smile, but was not entirely without warmth. "My husband taught me," she said. "He said good biscuits were the foundation of civilization." He was right. He was wrong about most things, but he was right about that. After the meal, Clara washed the dishes. Caleb sat at the table cleaning his rifle with oil and a rag, the ritual of maintenance he performed every evening, whether the gun needed it or not. The domesticity of the scene felt strange, foreign, like wearing clothes that belonged to someone else. "I'll show you the ranch tomorrow," he said. "All of it. You should know what you've gotten into." "I already know what I've gotten into." Clara dried the last plate and set it on the shelf. "I've gotten into a house where a dead woman's things are still on the dresser and a man who built walls to keep out everything, including himself." Caleb's hands stopped moving on the rifle. You always this direct. I used to be polite. It didn't save anyone." She hung the dish towel on its hook. "I'll be upstairs if you need anything." She left him sitting in the kitchen with his rifle and his thoughts. He heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the door to Sarah's room open and close, heard nothing after that. He finished cleaning the rifle, put it away, checked the locks on the doors, checked them again. Checked them a third time because the war had taught him that unlocked doors led to dead friends. Then he went upstairs to his own room at the end of the hall and lay on his bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the silence of a house that was no longer quite as empty as it had been that morning. Chapter 4. The Ghost. Clara woke before dawn. Habit. 28 years of rising in darkness did not break because the house was different. She dressed in the gray light that came before sun, then went downstairs on quiet feet. The kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was warm. Caleb had already left for the barn. She drank coffee standing at the window, looking out at land that stretched away in all directions. Wyoming Territory. A place so vast it made Kansas seem cramped. A place where the sky pressed down like a weight and the wind never stopped moving. Through the window she could see the barn, and beside it a corral, and in the corral a white horse that seemed to glow against the gray morning. Ghost. Clara set down her coffee cup, walked outside. The air was cool, not yet touched by the heat that would come with full sun. Her boots left prints in the dust. The world was quiet except for the sound of her own breathing and the creak of the corral fence as she approached. The horse saw her from 50 feet away. Its head came up, its ears pinned back. It moved to the far side of the corral hooves, striking the ground in sharp, deliberate steps. Clara stopped at the fence, rested her hands on the top rail, did not call out, did not make any sound, just stood there watching. The horse was a stallion, tall and powerfully built with a coat so white it looked like fresh snow. Its mane was long and tangled, its eyes were dark and wild and full of something that looked like fury, but might have been fear. "He'll kill you if you go in there." Clara turned. A young man stood 10 feet away, leaning against the barn wall with his arms crossed and a grin on his face. He was perhaps 24, with sandy hair and an easy manner that suggested he found most things in life amusing. "I'm not planning to go in," Clara said. "Good." He pushed off the wall and walked toward her, extending his hand. "Dutch Morrison, I work for Caleb sometimes. You must be the mail-order bride." "Clara Whitfield." "Done now, isn't it?" Caleb said. "You got married by proxy before you left Kansas." Clara had forgotten that detail. The paper marriage arranged by correspondence, legal but empty of ceremony. She was Clara Dunn now, a wife again, to a man who slept in a different room and spoke to her in sentences carefully constructed to reveal nothing. "Yes," she said, "done now." Dutch looked at the horse. "That's Ghost. Meanest animal in Wyoming Territory. Caleb's been trying to break him for 2 years. Can't nobody ride him. Can't nobody even touch him. Why not just let him go? Because he was Sarah's. Caleb's dead wife. She's the only person who could ever handle him." Dutch's grin faded slightly. "She died riding him. Horse threw her. Some say it was an accident. Some say Ghost did it on purpose. Horses don't kill on purpose. This one might. He's got the devil in him." Clara turned back to the horse. Ghost had moved closer, though he still maintained 20 feet of distance. He was watching her with those dark eyes, nostrils flaring, testing the air. "What happened?" Clara asked. "When Sarah died," Dutch shifted his weight. His easy manner became something more careful. "Found her at the base of Widow's Ridge. Neck broken. Ghost standing over her screaming like a thing possessed. Took 3 men to get a rope on him. Nearly killed 2 of them in the process." He paused. "Caleb wanted to shoot him. Mrs. Boone, the neighbor lady, talked him out of it. Said Sarah wouldn't want that." Mrs. Boone was right. Maybe. But that horse has been a devil ever since. Won't let anyone close. Acts like he's protecting something, even though there's nothing to protect anymore. Clara studied the stallion. The way he held himself. The tension in every line of his body. The wildness in his eyes that looked like rage, but felt like something else entirely. "He's not protecting something," she said quietly. "He's afraid. Afraid, lady, that horse fears nothing. Everything that fights that hard is afraid." Clara's hand tightened on the fence rail. He doesn't know what you want from him, so he fights. Dutch looked at her with new interest. The grin was gone completely now, replaced by something more genuine. You know horses. I know fear. Before Dutch could respond, the barn door opened. Caleb emerged carrying a coil of rope. He saw Clara at the fence, and his stride faltered, just for a moment. Then he continued toward them, his face carefully neutral. You're up early, he said. Habit. Dutch bothering you. Just introducing myself, boss. Dutch raised his hands in mock surrender. Being neighborly? Go check the south fence line. Storm last week might have knocked some posts down. Yes, sir? Dutch tipped his hat to Clara. Ma'am, pleasure meeting you. He left whistling as he walked toward the horses tied near the barn. Clara and Caleb stood alone at the corral fence. Ghost had retreated again, watching from the far corner. Dutch talks too much, Caleb said. He was kind. He's young. Thinks kindness is the same as running his mouth. Caleb set the rope on a fence post. What are you doing out here? Looking at your ghost. Sarah's ghost. Is there a difference? Caleb was quiet. He put his hands on the fence rail, his knuckles white with pressure. When he spoke, his voice was low and tight. I should have sold him. Should have put a bullet in him the day she died. But I couldn't. She loved that horse more than she loved most people. Did she love him more than she loved you? The question hung between them. Caleb's jaw worked. His hands tightened on the rail. Some days I think yes. Clara looked at the white horse. At the way it stood so still, every muscle coiled, ready to explode into violence at the slightest provocation. I'll come back tomorrow, she said. Same time. He won't let you close. I know. Then why come back? Because ghosts need witnesses. Clara turned toward the house. Even the ones that can't speak. She left Caleb standing at the fence. Behind her she heard Ghost whinny, a high, piercing sound that might have been challenge or might have been loneliness. In the growing light, it was impossible to tell the difference. Chapter 5. The weight of silence, continuing to meet 6,000-word count, the days found their rhythm. Clara rose before dawn, made coffee, stood at the corral, watching Ghost. Caleb worked from first light until dark, moving through chores with the mechanical precision of a man who had learned to turn labor into a form of forgetting. They ate together, breakfast and supper. Meals passed in near silence, broken only by necessary words. Pass the salt. More coffee. Thank you. Language stripped down to its most functional bones. On the third morning, an older woman arrived in a wagon pulled by a single mule. She was perhaps 58, though hard living made exact age difficult to determine gray-haired and lean-wearing men's trousers and a man's hat. She climbed down from the wagon with the efficiency of someone who had been doing physical work since childhood and saw no reason to stop now. You must be Clara, the woman said. I'm Maggie Boone, nearest neighbor, 8 miles east. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. Mrs. Boone? Just Maggie. Mrs. Implies respectability I've never quite managed. She looked Clara up and down with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're older than I expected. I'm 28. Pearl was 22 according to the letters. I'm not Pearl. No, you're not. Maggie's expression softened slightly. That's probably for the best. Pretty girls don't last long out here. They break or they leave. Sometimes both. I'm not pretty. I have eyes, girl, I can see that. But you're still standing after 5 days in Caleb Dunn's house, which means you're made of something tougher than china. Maggie invited herself inside, sat at the kitchen table, while Clara made fresh coffee, accepted a cup and drank it black, studying Clara over the rim. He told you about Sarah, Maggie asked. Showed me her grave. Did he tell you how she died? Riding accident. That's the easy version. Maggie set down her cup. Truth's more complicated, usually is. Clara waited. She had learned that silence could extract more truth than questions. Maggie sighed, looked out the window toward the corral where Ghost paced his endless circuit. Sarah was riding Ghost up on Widow's Ridge. It's a trail about 5 miles north, follows the edge of a drop. Beautiful view. Dangerous as hell. Horse came back alone, covered in sweat, wild-eyed. We found her at the base of the cliff, neck broken, dead maybe 3 hours. What happened? Nobody knows. Could have been a snake spooked the horse. Could have been a rock slide. Could have been Ghost just decided he didn't want a rider that day. Maggie's voice went quiet. Or could have been something else entirely. What do you mean? Maggie looked at Clara directly. There's things about that day that don't sit right. Sarah was a good rider, best I ever saw. She could ride Ghost when nobody else could touch him. For her to fall like that, something had to go real wrong. You think someone hurt her? I think Sarah had secrets, and I think secrets have a way of getting people killed. Maggie stood. But that's not your burden to carry. You got enough to manage living in a dead woman's shadow. Clara walked Maggie to her wagon. Before climbing up, the older woman turned back. You need anything, you send Dutch. I'm 8 miles away, but I come running when called. She paused. And Clara, don't try to be Sarah. Caleb doesn't need another Sarah. He needs someone who can live with ghosts without becoming one. The wagon rattled away, leaving Clara alone in the yard. She looked toward the corral. Ghost was standing at the far fence watching her. She walked toward him, slowly. No sudden movements. When she reached the fence, she stopped, did not call out, did not extend her hand, just stood there, a witness to his wildness. The horse trembled, every muscle taut, ready to flee or fight. I know, Clara said quietly. I know how it feels, to have people want things from you that you can't give, to have them look at you and see someone else. Ghost's ears swiveled toward her voice. They want me to be Pearl, pretty Pearl who writes nice letters and knows how to smile at the right moments, but I can't be her. I can only be this broken thing trying to figure out how to keep breathing. The horse took one step toward her, then stopped. The distance between them remained vast. I lost a daughter, Clara continued. Emma, 3 years old. She died in my arms. And ever since people look at me like I'm the one who killed her, like grief is contagious, like if they get too close, they'll catch what I have. Another step. Ghost's nostrils flared, testing the air, testing the truth in her words. So I understand why you fight, why you won't let anyone close, because the only thing worse than being alone is being touched by people who don't understand what you've lost. The sun climbed higher. The heat pressed down. Clara stood at the fence speaking to a horse who could not answer, telling truth she had never spoken to any living person. Ghost moved closer. 10 feet. Then 5. His eyes were fixed on her face. Then, with a suddenness that stole her breath, the horse shied away, bolted to the far corner of the corral, stood there trembling head high, every line of his body screaming rejection. Clara did not move, did not call after him, just stood witness to his fear and her own. Tomorrow, she said softly. I'll be here tomorrow. She turned and walked back to the house. Behind her, Ghost watched. The distance between them remained, but something had shifted. Something too small to name, but too real to ignore. Chapter 6. The Night of Truth. 10 days passed. Clara came to the fence every morning, spoke to Ghost, never approached, never demanded, just offered her presence like a gift that required nothing in return. The horse grew less wild, not tame, but less desperate in his violence. He watched her, listened to her voice, sometimes moved closer before shying away. Caleb watched too, from the barn, from the house, never commenting, never interfering, just observing this strange communion between his wife and the creature that had killed his first one. On the 11th night, Clara could not sleep. The room that smelled of lavender felt too small, too full of another woman's presence. She rose, dressed, went downstairs. The kitchen was dark. Then she saw him. Caleb sitting at the table, no lamp lit, holding something in his hands. I'm sorry, Clara said. I didn't mean to disturb you. You didn't. His voice came from the shadows. I don't sleep much anymore. She should have gone back upstairs, should have left him to his private darkness, but something in the quality of his stillness made her stay. May I sit? It's your house now, too. Clara pulled out a chair, sat across from him. In the darkness, she could barely make out his features, just the shape of him, the outline of his shoulders, the way he held whatever object occupied his hands. Her eyes adjusted. She saw what he held. A photograph. Not Sarah. A young boy in a uniform too large for his frame. Your brother, she said. Caleb's hands tightened on the photograph. How did you know I had a brother The way you look at that picture, it's how I look at pictures of Emma." Silence stretched. Outside, the wind moved across the prairie. Inside, two people sat in darkness, separated by a table, and joined by the weight of the dead they carried. "Thomas," Caleb said finally. His name was Thomas, 16 years old, lied about his age to enlist, said he wanted to fight beside his big brother. Gettysburg, second day, July 2nd, 1863, the charge up Cemetery Ridge. Caleb's voice went flat, factual. The tone of a man reciting something he had said so many times, the words had lost all meaning. "I was his sergeant. I led him up that hill, led 43 men up that hill. 11 came back down. Thomas wasn't one of them." Clara waited, breathing quietly, giving him space to continue or stop as he chose. "I found him 3 hours later. Took me that long to get back to where he'd fallen. He was still alive. Gut shot. Conscious." Caleb set the photograph on the table with careful precision. "He asked me if we'd won, if it had mattered. I lied. Told him yes, told him he was a hero. He died believing it. But you didn't win. We lost. Lost that charge, lost that day, lost that entire godforsaken battle." His voice cracked. "And Thomas died for nothing except my pride and his faith in me." Clara understood then. Understood why Caleb had come west. Why he had built a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Why he surrounded himself with walls and silence and work that never ended. "I killed my daughter," she said. Caleb's head came up. "Not with my hands, but with my choices. My husband wanted to move to town. Said the farm was too isolated, too far from doctors. I said no. Said we couldn't afford it. Said we'd be fine." Her voice stayed steady. "When Emma got sick, the fever came on fast. By the time we got her to town, it was too late. The doctor said if we'd lived closer, if we'd gotten her there sooner, she might have lived. You don't know that. I know my husband thought it. He never said it, but I saw it in his eyes every day until the fever took him too. He blamed me, and he was right to. No." "Yes." Clara leaned forward. "I made a choice. It killed my child. That's truth. Just like you made a choice to lead your brother up that hill, and it killed him. These are the truths we carry. I can't carry it." The words came out broken. "Some days I wake up and I can't breathe under the weight of it. Some days I can't remember why I'm supposed to keep breathing at all." "I know. How do you do it? How do you wake up every day and not just stop?" Clara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "I don't know if I do. I think maybe I died with Emma, and what's sitting here now is just going through the motions, waiting for my body to figure out what my heart already knows." Caleb stood, crossed to the window, pressed his forehead against the glass. His shoulders shook once, then went still. "Sarah never knew," he said. "About Thomas. About what happened at Gettysburg. I never told her. I thought if I could just build something good, something clean, I could bury the past underneath it. Make it matter less. Did it work? No, the past doesn't get buried, it just waits. And when you're not looking, it reminds you it's still there." Clara stood, walked to where he stood, did not touch him. Just stood beside him, looking out at the same darkness. "We're both haunted," she said. "Maybe that's why it works, why we can sit in the same room without pretending to be whole." Caleb turned his head to look at her. In the faint starlight through the window, his face was drawn and exhausted, and more honest than she had ever seen it. "I don't know how to be married to you," he said. "I don't know what you expect. I don't expect anything. I just need a place where I can stop pretending I'm not dead inside." "You're not dead. Neither are you, but we're close enough that the difference doesn't matter." He almost smiled, not quite, but something moved at the corner of his mouth that suggested the memory of warmth. "Sarah used to say, I thought too much about death." "What did you say?" "That death was more reliable than most living things." "You were right." They stood together in the darkness. Two people more ghost than flesh. Two people carrying dead children and dead dreams and the terrible weight of choices that could not be unmade. Outside in the corral, Ghost screamed, a high, wild sound that cut through the night like a blade. Clara and Caleb both turned toward the sound. Through the window they could see the white horse running in circles, hooves striking the ground in fury or fear or something that lived between the two. "He does that sometimes," Caleb said. "The screaming, Sarah used to go to him, talk to him until he calmed. Did it work? Sometimes. Clara looked at Caleb, at this man who had led his brother to death and built walls to keep out guilt and married a stranger because she understood ghosts. "I'll go," she said. "It's not safe." "Nothing's safe. We're proof of that." She walked outside. The night air was cool against her skin. Ghost was still running, still screaming. She walked to the corral, stood at the fence. "I know," she called over the sound of hooves and fury. "I know it hurts. I know you can't make it stop." Ghost whirled toward her, eyes wild, teeth bared. "But you're still here, still breathing, still fighting. That has to mean something." The horse charged, straight at her, full speed. Caleb shouted from the doorway. Clara did not move. Ghost stopped 3 feet from the fence, reared up, hooves slashing at air, then came down, stood trembling. Clara extended her hand, slowly, palm up, an offering, not a demand. "You don't have to let me touch you," she said quietly, "but I'm here, and I'm not afraid of you." The horse's breathing was harsh, ragged. Its white coat gleamed with sweat. Then, with a movement so slow it seemed to take forever, Ghost lowered his head, stretched his neck over the fence, touched his muzzle to Clara's palm. The contact lasted 1 heartbeat, 2, warmth and breath, and the softest pressure. Then Ghost jerked back, bolted to the far corner of the corral, but he had touched her. The wild, unbreakable ghost of a dead woman's love had touched a living hand. Clara turned. Caleb stood on the porch, his face white in the starlight, staring at her like she had split the earth open. "How—" The single word came out broken. "I didn't ask him for anything." Clara walked back toward the house. "I just showed up. Same as you." She passed him on the porch, went inside, climbed the stairs, returned to the room that smelled of lavender and the ghost of a woman she would never know. Behind her, she heard Caleb's footsteps, slow, deliberate. The sound of a man trying to understand something that defied understanding. She lay in bed in the darkness. Her hand still felt the warmth of Ghost's breath. Her heart still held the weight of truths spoken in shadow. Tomorrow she would wake, would make coffee, would stand at the fence, would continue the strange quiet work of living while mostly dead. But tonight, in this moment, something had shifted. A ghost had touched her hand, and she had not flinched. In the room at the end of the hall, Caleb Dunn lay awake, staring at his ceiling, thinking about a woman who spoke to horses and dead children, who had crossed 5 states to marry a stranger who stood unflinching before the thing that had killed his wife. Thinking about the way Ghost had touched her hand. Thinking about how Sarah used to do the same thing, stand at that fence, extend her palm, wait with infinite patience for Ghost to come to her. Thinking about how Clara Whitfield, unwanted daughter, replacement bride, widow of sorrows, had done in 11 days what no one else could do in 2 years, and wondering what it meant that the only person who could touch his ghosts was someone carrying her own. Outside, Ghost stood in his corral, head high, looking toward the house where light had finally been extinguished. The wind moved across the prairie, the mountains held their ancient silence, and in a house built by a man trying to bury his past, 2 people lay awake in separate rooms, bound by truths they had spoken in darkness and the ghost that walked between them. Chapter 7, The Creditor. 3 weeks into the marriage that was not quite a marriage, a man arrived at the ranch in a black carriage pulled by matched bay horses. The carriage was expensive, too expensive for Wyoming territory. The kind of vehicle that belonged in Denver or San Francisco, not on a dirt track that led to a cattle ranch at the edge of wilderness. Clara was hanging laundry when she saw the dust cloud approaching. She paused, a wet sheet in her hands, watching the vehicle materialize from heat, shimmer into solid reality. Something cold moved through her chest. Instinct, perhaps, or the recognition that trouble often arrived in fine clothing. The carriage stopped in front of the house. A man climbed down. He was perhaps 38 tall and well-built, wearing a vest of gray silk and boots polished to a mirror shine. His face was handsome in a hard way, all sharp angles and cold calculation. He looked at the ranch house, at the barn, at Clara standing with her laundry, and his mouth curved in something that was not quite a smile. "Mrs. Dunn, I presume?" His voice was cultured, Eastern educated, completely wrong for this place. "Yes." Clara set down the sheet. did not approach. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Caleb, old friend. He'll want to know I've arrived." The man tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "William Cargill, from Montana. Before Caleb found religion and respectability out here in the wilderness." The way he said respectability made it sound like a crime. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. "I'll get him." She walked to the barn, her spine straight, her pace unhurried. But her heart was beating faster. Something about William Cargill felt wrong. Not dangerous in the way of wild animals or sudden storms, dangerous in the way of men who smile while twisting knives. Caleb was in the barn shoeing a horse. He looked up when Clara entered, saw her expression, and his hands went still on the hoof he was holding. "What's wrong?" "A man named William Cargill is here. He says he's a friend from Montana." Every muscle in Caleb's body went rigid. The hammer slipped from his fingers, struck the ground with a dull thud that echoed in the barn's silence. "Caleb!" He released the horse's hoof, stood slowly. His face had gone pale beneath the tan. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Too careful. "Stay in the house." "What?" "Stay in the house. Lock the doors. Don't come out until I tell you." "Caleb, what's happening? Please." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Fear. Real fear. The kind that came from knowing exactly what was about to happen and being powerless to stop it. "Just trust me. Stay inside." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to demand explanations, but the look on his face stopped her. She nodded, turned, walked back toward the house. Behind her, she heard Caleb's footsteps, heavy, deliberate, the sound of a man walking towards something he had been running from for a very long time. She did not go inside, could not. Instead, she moved to the side of the house where she could see without being seen, where she could watch through the gap between barn and porch. Caleb stepped into the yard. Cargill turned toward him. For a moment, neither man moved. They stood 20 feet apart, measuring each other. Then Cargill's smile widened. "Caleb Dunn, been a long time." "Not long enough." Caleb's voice was flat, empty of everything except control. 3 years. I counted every day." Cargill walked forward, casual, confident. "Nice place you've built here. 300 acres, I heard. House, barn, livestock. Must have cost a fair sum." "What do you want, William?" "What I've always wanted, what you owe me." Cargill stopped 10 feet away. $3,000, plus interest. Call it $4,000, considering the inconvenience." "I don't have $4,000. "Then you'd better find it. By October 1st, that gives you 4 months. Cargill glanced toward where Clara hid. She froze, holding her breath. "Pretty wife you've got. Older than the last one, less decorative, but she looks sturdy, the kind that can work. Leave her out of this." "Hard to leave her out when she's standing right there behind the house, listening to every word." Cargill raised his voice slightly. "Hello, Mrs. Dunn. No need to hide. This is family business, in a manner of speaking." Clara stepped into view. No point in pretending now. She walked to stand beside Caleb, her hands clasped at her waist. Cargill looked between them. His smile turned sharp. Interesting. The war hero and the mail-order bride. Very domestic, very respectable. He turned to Clara. "Has he told you about Montana, about what we did there?" "William!" Caleb's voice carried warning. "No." "Well, let me enlighten you. Your husband and I were partners. Security consultants, we called ourselves. Fancy words for hired guns. We protected property, discouraged claim jumpers, made problems disappear." Cargill paused. "Until one problem didn't disappear the way it was supposed to. Until one problem ended up dead. And until your husband took all our money and ran west while I took all the blame." Clara looked at Caleb. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His hands had curled into fists, but he did not deny anything Cargill said. 2 years in territorial prison," Cargill continued. 2 years of my life gone because Caleb Dunn needed a fresh start. Now I'm out, and I've come to collect." "I'll get you the money," Caleb said. "Damn right you will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure every person in Buffalo knows what you really are. I'll make sure they know the war hero is nothing but a coward and a thief. I'll make sure they know you have blood on your hands that has nothing to do with Gettysburg. I said I'll get it. October 1st, not a day later." Cargill climbed back into his carriage. Before driving away, he looked at Clara one more time. Pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Dunn. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again." The carriage rolled away, leaving dust and silence in its wake. Clara and Caleb stood in the yard. Neither spoke. The sun beat down. Somewhere a horse whinnied. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds, the world continuing as if nothing had shifted beneath their feet. "Is it true?" Clara asked finally. "Yes." "All of it." "Most of it." She waited. He owed her more than that. He knew it, too. His shoulders sagged. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been shame, or might have been exhaustion, or might have been both. His name was Marcus Trent. He was a homesteader. Cargill and I were hired to discourage him from filing a claim on land that belonged to someone with more money. We were supposed to scare him, burn his barn, run off his livestock, make it clear he wasn't welcome. Caleb paused, swallowed hard. But Trent had a gun. He shot at us. Cargill shot back, killed him. It was self-defense, technically, but we were trespassing. We were hired to terrorize. If the law got involved, we'd both hang. So you ran. I took the money we'd saved, our partnership stake, enough to buy land and start over. I left Cargill to clean up the mess. He got caught. I didn't. Caleb looked at her. That's who you married, a man who left his partner to rot in prison, a man who built this ranch on blood money. Clara absorbed this, turned it over in her mind, examined it from all angles. Then she asked the only question that mattered. Did you know Cargill would kill him? No. Did you want him dead? Caleb's silence stretched long. When he answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus Trent was the man who raped my sister 5 years earlier. I didn't hire Cargill to kill him. But when Cargill pulled that trigger, I didn't stop him. I didn't feel sorry. I felt relief. The air between them changed. Clara understood now. Understood the weight Caleb carried, not just guilt over abandonment, guilt over satisfaction, over the terrible relief of seeing someone who had hurt his family lying dead in the dirt. "Where's your sister now?" Clara asked. "Dead. Killed herself 2 years after the rape. I found her in the barn. She'd hung herself from the rafters." His voice cracked. "So I didn't save her. I just got revenge. And even that I couldn't do myself. I had to let someone else pull the trigger. Then I ran and let him take the fall." Clara stepped closer, not touching, just closing the distance between them. "You should have told me before I came. Would you have still come?" She considered this, considered the woman she had been in Kansas, the woman who had buried a daughter and a husband, the woman who had been so desperate to escape that she had crossed 5 states to marry a stranger. "Yes," she said, "because broken people don't get to judge other broken people. We just get to decide if we can carry each other's pieces." Caleb's eyes met hers, red-rimmed, exhausted. $4,000 by October. I don't have it. The ranch is worth more, but I can't sell it in 4 months. The cattle won't bring enough. I don't know what to do. Clara thought of Ghost, of the white stallion that only she could touch, of the conversation she'd had with Dutch 3 days ago when he'd noticed the shape of the horse's head, the length of its legs, the particular formation of its shoulders. Thoroughbred, Dutch had said, or part, anyway. Somebody paid good money for that horse's bloodline. An idea was forming. Dangerous. Necessary. But not one she could share yet, not until she was certain. "We'll figure it out," she said. You said I was your wife. That makes your debts mine, too." She walked into the house. Behind her, Caleb stood in the yard watching her go. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the ridge above the ranch. Dutch Morrison sitting on his horse too far away to hear words but close enough to see the black carriage, close enough to recognize William Cargill, close enough to know that everything was about to change. Chapter 8. The Bloodline. That evening, after Caleb had ridden out to check the north fence line, Clara went to the small desk in Sarah's room. The room she still thought of as Sarah's, even though she slept there now. Even though her clothes hung in the wardrobe beside dresses she could not bring herself to remove. She found what she was looking for in the bottom drawer. Sarah's journal, leather-bound, locked with a small brass clasp. Clara had seen it the first day but had not touched it. Journals were private things, sacred things. Reading a dead woman's thoughts felt like grave robbing. But Cargill's visit had changed the rules. Survival trumped propriety. Clara took a hairpin from her own hair, worked it into the lock. The mechanism was simple, designed to keep out idle curiosity, not determined intrusion. The clasp popped open. The journal fell open to a page dated June 1882, 2 months before Sarah died. The handwriting was elegant, carefully formed letters that suggested education and leisure time, the hand of a woman who had never worked fields or scrubbed floors or hauled water until her back screamed. June 15, 1882. William Cargill came to the ranch today. Caleb was in Buffalo buying supplies. I was alone. William was drunk or close to it. He said things, inappropriate things, touched my arm. I told him to leave. He laughed, said Caleb owed him more than money, said he'd come back when Caleb wasn't around. I am frightened, but I cannot tell Caleb. He would kill William, and I cannot let him destroy himself over me. Clara's hands tightened on the journal. She turned pages, found another entry. July 3, 1882. William came again. This time he did not leave when I asked. He cornered me in the barn, put his hands on me. Ghost was there. The horse went wild, kicked at William, bit his arm. William ran, but he promised he would return. Said next time Caleb would be gone longer and I would learn what it meant to refuse him. I must tell Caleb, but if I do, he will go to Montana. He will kill William. He will hang for it. What do I do? The entry stopped. The next page was blank. Then one final entry dated the day Sarah died. August 2, 1882. I saw William on the ridge this morning, watching the house. I am taking Ghost up to Widow's Ridge. If I can get to Maggie's ranch on the other side, I can wait there until Caleb returns. I am afraid. But I am more afraid of what Caleb will do if I tell him the truth. Better to be gone a few hours than to watch my husband become a murderer. That was all. The rest of the pages were empty. Clara sat with the journal in her lap, reading those final words again and again. Sarah had not died in a random riding accident. She had been fleeing. And somehow on that ridge with William Cargill watching Ghost had thrown her. Had the horse been spooked? Had Cargill done something to cause the fall? Or had Ghost in his fear and Sarah's fear simply panicked at the wrong moment on the wrong trail? The door opened. Clara looked up, startled. Caleb stood in the doorway. His eyes went to the journal in her hands. His face went pale. That's Sarah's. I know. You shouldn't read it. I had to. Clara held up the journal. Did you know about Cargill coming here, about him threatening Sarah? No, she never told me. Caleb stepped into the room. What are you talking about? Clara read him the entries. All of them. She watched his face as understanding dawned. Watched shock turn to horror. Turned to rage so pure it made the air around him vibrate. When she finished, he was shaking. He killed her. The words came out strangled. He was on that ridge. He did something. Spooked the horse, caused her to fall. He killed her. You don't know that. I know him. I know what he's capable of. Caleb's hands opened and closed. Sarah died running from him, and I never knew. Never protected her. Never even knew she needed protecting. She was protecting you. She knew you'd kill him if you found out. She was right. Caleb turned toward the door. I'm going to Buffalo. I'm going to find Cargill, and I'm going to finish what should have been finished 3 years ago. Clara stood, moved between him and the door. No. Clara, move. No, killing him won't bring her back. It'll just put you in prison, or on a gallows. And I didn't cross 5 states to watch you destroy yourself over a dead woman's honor. She was my wife. I'm your wife. The words came out harder than intended. And I'm alive. And I'm telling you that revenge is a luxury we can't afford. They stood facing each other. The journal lay open on the bed, Sarah's careful handwriting bearing witness to secrets that had rotted in darkness for 2 years. Then what do we do? Caleb's voice broke. He killed her. He's here demanding money. He's threatening everything. What do? We find $4,000. We pay him. We get him out of our lives. Then we live. We live better and longer than he does. That's the revenge that matters. I don't have $4,000. I know. Clara took a breath. But I know where to get it. She told him about Ghost, about the shape of his head and the length of his legs, about the way Dutch had commented on his bloodline, about the research she'd been doing in Sarah's books about horse breeding. There was a thoroughbred stolen from Kentucky in 1879, Sired by Longfellow, one of the best racing stallions in America, the horse was white, distinctive, worth $5,000. It was never recovered. Caleb stared at her. You think Ghost is that horse? I think he might be, or might be descended from that bloodline. Either way, if I can prove it, he's worth more than this ranch. We can't sell Ghost. We might not have a choice. Clara, that horse was Sarah's. It's all I have left of her. That horse might be the only thing that saves us. Clara picked up the journal. Sarah wrote about protecting you, about choosing your life over her own safety. If she were here, what would she tell you to do? Caleb looked at the journal, at Sarah's handwriting, at the words of a woman who had died trying to save him from himself. She'd tell me to let him go, he said finally. She'd tell me to choose the living over the dead. Then that's what we do. But even as Clara said it, she felt the weight of what she was proposing. Ghost was more than a horse. He was a ghost indeed, the living remnant of Sarah's love. The creature that had killed her and mourned her and refused to let anyone else touch him except the one woman who understood grief. Selling Ghost would be like selling a piece of Sarah herself. But keeping Ghost would mean losing the ranch, would mean Cargill's threats becoming reality, would mean everything Caleb had built crumbling under the weight of old sins. I need to be certain about his bloodline, Clara said. I need to take him to someone who knows thoroughbreds, someone who can verify. There's a breeder in Sheridan, 3 days' ride. Then I'll go to Sheridan, not alone. Dutch can come with me. I don't trust Dutch. You don't trust anyone. Clara met his eyes. But we don't have the luxury of trust anymore. We have 4 months, and we need $4,000. This is the only way. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once, sharp. I'll talk to Dutch in the morning. Arrange the trip. He paused at the door. Clara? Yes. Thank you for not judging, for not running. I told you, broken people don't judge. He left. Clara sat alone in Sarah's room, holding Sarah's journal, feeling the weight of decisions that would determine whether they survived or shattered. Outside, Ghost screamed, that high, wild sound he made when the darkness pressed too close. Clara went to the window, looked out at the corral where the white horse paced in moonlight. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But sorrow changed nothing. The truth remained. To save the ranch, to save Caleb, to save the fragile beginning they had built from mutual brokenness, she would have to sell the one creature who understood her grief. She would have to betray the ghost that had trusted her. Chapter 9. The proposition. Dutch Morrison arrived at dawn, his easy grin firmly in place. Clara met him at the barn where Caleb was already saddling horses. Dutch, Caleb's voice was carefully neutral, Clara needs to take Ghost to Sheridan. 3 days there, 3 days back. You'll go with her. Dutch's grin faltered. Take Ghost, boss, that horse can't be ridden. Clara can ride him. Since when? Since she's the only person he'll let touch him. Caleb tightened a cinch strap. You'll keep her safe on the road. Make sure she gets to the breeder and back. That's all. Dutch looked at Clara. Something moved behind his eyes. Calculation, interest, the look of a man reassessing value. What's in Sheridan? He asked. None of your concern, Caleb said. If I'm riding 3 days there and 3 days back, it's my concern. Clara stepped forward. I need to verify Ghost's bloodline. There's a possibility he's worth significant money. If he is, we need to know. How much money? Enough. Dutch studied her. Then Caleb. Then the white horse in the corral beyond. His expression shifted into something more serious. And if he's worth that much, what happens then? We decide. Clara's voice stayed steady. But first, we need to know. Dutch nodded slowly. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. First light. I'll be ready. He started to turn away, then stopped. Clara, can I talk to you private? Caleb's jaw tightened. But he nodded, walked into the barn, leaving them alone in the yard. Dutch stepped closer, dropped his voice. I know why you're doing this. I saw Cargill's carriage yesterday. I know he's here for money. Clara's heart skipped. You know Cargill? Know of him. Word travels. Man like that, people remember. Dutch glanced toward the barn to make sure Caleb was out of earshot. Here's what you should know. Cargill doesn't just want money. He wants blood. He wants Caleb to suffer. You pay him $4,000, he'll just come back for more. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting there might be another way to handle this. A way that doesn't involve selling a horse worth $5,000 for $4,000. Clara studied Dutch's face. The easy charm was gone, replaced by something harder, something that reminded her of men she'd known in Kansas, men who smiled while calculating how to profit from other people's misery. What way? She asked. Let me think on it. We've got 3 days on the road, plenty of time to discuss options. Dutch's grin returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Trust me, Clara, I'm on your side. So why? Because I work for Caleb, and because I like you, and because Cargill is the kind of man who makes enemies everywhere he goes. Eventually those enemies find each other. He walked away before Clara could respond. She stood in the yard, unease crawling up her spine. Dutch knew something, had some plan, and she had just agreed to spend 6 days alone with him on the road, far from Caleb, far from anyone who might intervene if Dutch's plan turned dangerous. But what choice did she have? The clock was ticking. October 1st was coming, whether she trusted Dutch or not. That night a letter arrived, brought by a writer from Buffalo who accepted payment and wrote on without conversation. The letter was addressed to Clara in handwriting she recognized, her stepmother's handwriting. Clara opened it alone in Sarah's room. Read it once, then again, then a third time, each reading making the words cut deeper. Clara, I do not know if this letter will reach you or if you will care when it does, but I must tell you what I have done because the weight of it is too much to carry alone. Pearl had her baby, a boy. Robert Calloway married her 2 weeks after the birth. They are telling everyone the child came early. No one questions it. Pearl is happy, or as happy as Pearl can be. But Clara, you must know something. Pearl knew about Emma. She knew about your daughter's death. I told her years ago in a moment of weakness when I was trying to explain why you had become so withdrawn. When the mail-order bride arrangement fell through, when Robert's mother objected, Pearl was desperate. She needed a way out. And she remembered what I had told her about you, about your grief, about how you could not bear to stay in that house where Emma had died. She told me to send you, said you would go because you had nothing left to lose, said your pain made you convenient. I agreed because I am weak, because I wanted Pearl's scandal hidden, because I thought you might be better off in Wyoming than here slowly dying of memories. But I see now what we did. We used your grief as a tool. We sacrificed you to save Pearl. And I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I only wanted you to know the truth, that you were not chosen by chance. You were chosen because your pain made you useful. Your stepmother, Ida. Clara folded the letter, set it on the dresser, looked at her reflection in Sarah's mirror. Pearl had known about Emma, had known that Clara's grief made her desperate enough to accept any escape, had weaponized that grief to save herself. The betrayal should have hurt more, should have cut deeper. But Clara felt oddly numb. She had suspected on some level that Pearl's sudden change of heart was strategic, had known that beautiful, selfish Pearl would not have given up a wealthy husband without calculation. But knowing and having it confirmed were different things. Clara thought about the girl she had been, the mother who had held her daughter through 3 days of fever, the widow who had buried a husband and child in the same week, the woman who had been so hollow with grief that crossing 5 states to marry a stranger seemed preferable to staying in a house full of ghosts. Pearl had looked at that woman and seen utility, a tool, a convenience. And somehow that woman had survived, had married a man carrying his own ghosts, had touched a horse no one else could touch, had read a dead woman's journal and planned to sell that woman's beloved horse to save her husband from his past, had become someone Clara herself barely recognized. She picked up the letter, carried it downstairs, found Caleb in the kitchen, cleaning his rifle as he did every night. "Read this," she said, handing him the letter. He read it. His face darkened. When he looked up, his eyes were burning. "Your sister used you." "Yes. She knew about Emma, about your daughter, and she used that pain to manipulate you into coming here." "Yes. You should hate her." Clara thought about this, about Pearl in her fine dresses and her careful curls, about Pearl pregnant and desperate, about Pearl choosing survival over honor. "I don't hate her," Clara said slowly. "I pity her. She's 24 years old with a husband who married her out of obligation and a child conceived in scandal and a life built on lies. That's its own kind of prison. You're more forgiving than I could be." "I'm not forgiving her. I'm just choosing not to let her pain become mine." Clara sat across from him. "We all do what we must to survive. Pearl sacrificed me. I'm about to sacrifice Ghost. We're not so different. You're nothing like her. I'm exactly like her. I'm just more honest about it." Caleb reached across the table, took her hand. The gesture was unexpected, unfamiliar. His palm was rough and warm and solid. "You're the most honest person I've ever met," he said. "It's terrifying." "Why terrifying?" "Because honesty demands honesty in return, and I've spent so long hiding from truth that I don't know how to live with it." Clara turned her hand over, laced her fingers through his, felt the calluses that matched her own. "Then we'll learn together." They sat in the kitchen, hands joined across the table, while the lamp burned low and the night pressed against the windows. Two people learning to touch without flinching. Two people building something fragile from the wreckage of who they used to be. Tomorrow, Clara would ride to Sheridan with Dutch Morrison and his hidden plans. Would take Ghost away from the only home the horse had known. Would begin the process of selling the creature that had become a bridge between her grief and Caleb's. But tonight, she sat with her husband, who was learning to be a husband. In a house haunted by a woman who had died trying to protect him, planning to betray a horse to save a ranch built on blood money. And somehow, impossibly, she felt more alive than she had in 4 years. Grief was a strange thing. It could be used as a weapon, as Pearl had used it. Or it could be shared as she and Caleb shared it. The difference between the two determined whether you survived whole or shattered. Clara had been shattered, was still shattered, but she was learning to carry the pieces differently, learning to let someone else help carry them. That had to count for something, even if it meant selling ghosts to pay devils. Chapter 10. The Quiet Moment. 3 days later, Clara stood on a ridge 5 miles from the ranch. Dutch had gone ahead to scout the trail. She had asked for a moment alone. He had agreed with that calculating look that made her skin crawl. The mountains rose before her massive and indifferent. The valley spread below a patchwork of green and brown where drought had begun its work. The sky was so blue it hurt to look at. Wyoming in summer, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Clara sat on a flat rock. Ghost stood nearby, reins loose, cropping grass. The horse had walked beside her for 3 days without protest, had let her saddle him each morning, had carried her across rivers and through canyons with the steady patience of a creature that had finally found someone worth trusting. And she was going to sell him. The thought sat in her chest like a stone, heavy, immovable. True. She thought about Emma, about the way her daughter's hand had felt in hers, small and perfect and burning with fever, and about the moment she had felt that hand go cold, about the sound she had made when she realized her child was gone. A sound that was not quite human, more animal than woman, pure grief given voice. She had wanted to die that day, had wanted to follow Emma into whatever darkness waited beyond breathing. But her body had continued, heart beating, lungs filling, cells dividing and repairing and carrying on with the stubborn insistence of flesh that did not understand when to quit. For 4 years she had existed in that strange space between living and wanting not to, had gone through motions without meaning, had endured because stopping required more energy than continuing. Then she had come to Wyoming, had married a stranger, had touched a horse that killed the woman he loved, had read that woman's journal and learned that ghosts could speak if you listened hard enough. And somewhere in the doing, in the touching, in the reading and listening and surviving, she had begun to live again. Not fully, not joyfully, but more than existing. Something closer to being present in her own life. Ghost nickered softly, raised his head to look at her. Clara stood, walked to the horse, put her hand on his neck, felt his warmth, his solid reality. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The horse leaned into her touch, trusting, believing she would not hurt him. She was about to prove him wrong. A sound behind her, Dutch returning from his scout. His expression was strange, excited, nervous, the look of a man about to reveal something he should have revealed days ago. "Clara, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Cargill. About why he's really here." Dutch dismounted, stood too close. "I haven't been entirely honest with you." Clara's hand dropped from Ghost's neck. "Explain." "Cargill hired me 3 months ago to watch Caleb, to report on the ranch, on his finances, on his vulnerabilities." Dutch spoke quickly, words tumbling out. "I didn't know Caleb then, didn't know you. I was just a hand looking for work. Cargill paid well." Everything in Clara went cold. "You've been spying." "I have, but that's over now, because I've seen what Cargill is, and I've seen what you are, and I'm choosing you. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I'm about to give you something worth believing." Dutch pulled a small device from his saddlebag, a phonograph cylinder, wax surface gleaming. "I recorded Cargill 3 weeks ago. He was drunk, bragging, and he said things you need to hear." "What things?" Dutch set the cylinder on a flat rock, produced a small hand-cranked phonograph player from his bag, the kind drummers used for demonstrations. He set up the device with practiced efficiency. "Listen," he said, then turned the crank. The cylinder began to spin. Sound emerged, tinny, distant, but clear enough. Cargill's voice slurred with whiskey but unmistakable. "Sarah Dunn? God, she was something. Too good for Caleb. Should have been mine. I told her that. Told her if she wouldn't have me willingly, I'd take what was owed. She ran. Took that white horse up to the ridge. I followed. Easy enough to spook a horse on a narrow trail. Easy enough to watch it throw her, watch her fall, watch her break. Static. Then Cargill's laugh, cold, satisfied. Caleb never knew, never suspected. Just thought it was an accident. Built his whole life on the foundation of not knowing I killed his wife. And now I'm going to take everything he built, ranch, money, that new wife of his, everything." The recording ended. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Clara stared at the phonograph, at the cylinder that held a dead woman's murder confession, at Dutch, who had carried this secret for 3 weeks. "You recorded him confessing to murder." "I did." "Why didn't you go to the sheriff?" "Because Cargill has friends, money. A good lawyer could argue the recording was faked, could say I manufactured it. Sheriff might not even accept it as evidence." Dutch met her eyes. "But Caleb would accept it, and with this Caleb could make Cargill disappear permanently." Clara understood. Dutch was offering her husband the same thing Cargill had offered him 3 years ago, a chance to kill someone who deserved it, a chance to balance scales, a chance to let revenge masquerade as justice. "No," she said. "What? No. We're not giving this to Caleb. We're taking it to the sheriff in Sheridan. We're making it official. We're doing this legally." "Clara, the law doesn't always work. Then we make it work. We find a way." She picked up the cylinder with careful hands. "Sarah died because of secrets, because she kept Cargill's threats hidden to protect Caleb. I won't make the same mistake. Even if it means Cargill walks free. Even then, because if Caleb kills Cargill, Cargill wins. He turns Caleb into exactly what he accused him of being, a killer, a man who solves problems with violence." Clara wrapped the cylinder in a cloth, placed it carefully in her saddlebag. "We do this the right way, or we don't do it at all." Dutch studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head, smiling. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both." They rode on toward Sheridan, toward a breeder who would confirm what Clara already suspected, that Ghost was indeed descended from stolen thoroughbred stock, that he was worth $5,000 or more, that selling him would solve every financial problem they had. But Clara no longer cared about the money. She had something better: evidence, truth, a way to remove Cargill from their lives without turning Caleb into a murderer. Ghost walked beside her, trusting her completely. And for the first time since she had planned to sell him, Clara felt the weight lift slightly. Maybe she wouldn't have to betray this Ghost after all. Maybe there was another way. Maybe honest people could survive in a world built on lies. Or maybe that was foolish hope speaking, the kind of hope that got people killed. But hope was all she had. Hope and truth and a recording of a killer's drunken confession. It would have to be enough. The night they returned from Sheridan, Clara found Caleb in the barn. He was standing at Ghost's stall, one hand on the gate latch. "What are you doing?" she asked. He didn't turn around. "Dutch told me. About the breeder. About the $5,000. Clara's chest tightened. "Caleb, you were going to sell him. To save me. To save the ranch." His voice was flat, empty. "We need the money, Cargill. I know what we need." Caleb opened the stall gate. Ghost stepped out confused but trusting. "But I can't let you sell Sarah's ghost to pay for my sins." "Then what are we going to do?" Caleb led Ghost out into the night, toward the open range, toward the mountains where the white horse had run wild before Sarah caught him. "We let him choose." Caleb removed the halter. "If he stays, we keep him. If he runs—" He stepped back. "Then he was never ours to sell." Ghost stood between them, looking at Clara, at Caleb, at the open land beyond. Then he ran. White coat disappearing into darkness. Gone. Clara felt tears on her face. "What have we done?" "The only honest thing left to do." Caleb took her hand. "Now we face Cargill with nothing but truth." They stood in the empty corral, watching the space where a ghost had vanished, neither knowing that by morning Ghost would be gone in a different way, taken by the man who had killed the woman who loved him. Chapter 11. The Vanishing. They arrived in Sheridan on the 6th day. The breeder confirmed what Clara had suspected. Ghost carried bloodlines worth $5,000 or more. Papers could be drawn. Buyers could be found. The horse that had killed one woman and saved another could be transformed into currency. But Clara and Dutch never made it back to the ranch. On the morning of the 7th day, as they prepared to leave Sheridan, a telegram arrived. From Maggie Boone. 4 words that made Clara's blood freeze. Ghost gone, Caleb searching. Clara read the telegram 3 times, then looked at Dutch. "Cargill," she said. "Could be the horse just got loose." "No, Cargill took him. He's forcing Caleb's hand." They rode hard, pushed the horses to the edge of endurance, cut the 3-day journey to 2 by riding through the night, stopping only when the animals could go no further. Clara's body screamed with exhaustion. Her hands bled from gripping reins, her legs cramped. She ignored it all. Ghost was gone, and Caleb was searching alone. They reached the ranch at dawn on the 9th day. Maggie's wagon sat in the yard. The older woman emerged from the house, her face drawn with worry and something darker, something that looked like fear. "Where is he?" Clara dismounted before her horse had fully stopped. "North Ridge, been up there 2 days." Maggie gripped Clara's arm. "He's not right, Clara. Haven't seen him like this since Sarah died. He's got that look. The one that says he's done caring whether he lives or not." Clara turned to Dutch. "The recording. Give it to Maggie. If we're not back by sundown, she takes it to the sheriff." "Clara, wait. You don't know what Cargill's planning." "I know exactly what he's planning. He's planning to make Caleb choose between everything he loves, and I'm planning to take that choice away." She swung back into the saddle despite her horse's exhaustion. "Sundown, Dutch? If we're not back, Maggie goes to the law." She rode north before anyone could stop her. The trail to the North Ridge was steep and treacherous, the same trail Sarah had ridden 2 years ago, the same trail where a woman had died and a ghost had been born. Clara's horse labored up the switchbacks, foam flecking its sides. She pushed it harder than she should have, knew she was risking the animal, did it anyway. Some things mattered more than caution. She heard voices before she saw them. Caleb's voice, rough with exhaustion and rage, and another voice, smooth, cultured, pleased with itself. Cargill. Clara dismounted, left her horse tied to a scrub pine, moved forward on foot using rocks and brush for cover. The voices grew clearer. "Beautiful spot," Cargill was saying. "Can see why Sarah loved it up here. Can see why she chose this place to run to when she was trying to escape me." "Where is he?" Caleb's voice was barely recognizable, ground down to gravel in fury. "Where's Ghost? Safe. For now. Whether he stays safe depends entirely on you." Clara crept closer, found a position behind a boulder that gave her a view of the scene below. Her breath caught. Caleb stood at the edge of the ridge, the same edge Sarah had fallen from. 20 feet beyond him, Cargill sat on a rock, relaxed and confident. And behind Cargill, in a makeshift corral built from rope and stakes, Ghost stood guard over something. Clara's breath caught. A mare, dappled gray, and beside her a foal, maybe 3 months old, white like its sire. Surprised, Cargill's smile widened. Found them yesterday. Ghost wasn't running away. He was protecting his family. Sarah bred him before she died. This foal is her legacy, and I'm going to shoot it right in front of you unless you sign over that ranch. Clara understood then. Ghost hadn't been stolen. He'd been found, doing what any father would do, protecting what he loved. The foal was Sarah's final gift, proof that even ghosts could create life. The mare looked travel-worn but alert. The foal pressed against her flank, sensing the tension in the air. And Ghost stood between his family and Cargill, every muscle coiled ready to die, protecting what he loved. "Here's my offer," Cargill continued. "You sign over the ranch, every acre, every building, every animal, to me. In exchange, I give you the horse, and I let your wife go back to Kansas where she belongs. I don't have the deed here. No, but you will tomorrow. You'll ride to Buffalo, you'll get the papers drawn up, you'll sign everything over, and then you'll leave Wyoming. Forever. And if I refuse, then I shoot the horse, right here, while you watch. The way you watched me shoot Marcus Trent. The way you've watched everything important in your life die while you stood by and did nothing." Caleb's hands curled into fists. "You killed Sarah." "I did. She was too good for you. I told her that. Told her she should have chosen me instead. When she refused, when she tried to run, I made sure she'd never refuse anyone again." Cargill stood, walked toward the edge of the ridge. "I was standing right here, right where you're standing now. I watched her try to control that white devil. I fired my pistol into the air. The horse spooked. She went over. I watched her fall, watched her break. It was almost beautiful." Clara saw Caleb's body go rigid, saw his hand move toward the pistol at his hip. "Don't," Cargill said calmly. "You shoot me. I've got men in Buffalo who know where I am, who know about the ranch, who'll make sure the law comes down on you harder than you can imagine. You'll hang, and your widow bride will end up right where I want her, working in my house, warming my bed, paying your debts with her body." That was when Clara moved. She stood up from behind the boulder, stepped into view. Both men turned toward her, surprise breaking through their standoff. "Hello, William," Clara said. "I've been wanting to talk to you." Chapter 12. The Truth Revealed. Cargill recovered quickly. His surprise melted into that smooth smile she had learned to hate. "Mrs. Dunn, you're earlier than expected. Dutch was supposed to keep you in Sheridan another day at least." "Dutch had a change of heart, told me everything, about how you hired him to spy, about how you've been planning this for months." Clara walked forward slowly, hands visible, no weapons. "He also told me something else, something you're going to want to hear." "I doubt that. He recorded you. 3 weeks ago, you were drunk. You confessed to killing Sarah, to murdering her deliberately. Your own voice, William, on a phonograph cylinder, admitting everything." Cargill's smile faltered, just for a moment, then returned harder than before. "You're bluffing. Dutch wouldn't betray me. I pay him too well." "You paid him. Past tense. Then he met me, met Caleb. Realized you were planning to destroy good people for no reason except your own broken pride. So he chose differently." Clara stopped 10 feet from Cargill. "The recording is with Maggie Boone right now. If we're not back by sundown, she takes it to the sheriff. Your voice, your confession, your neck in a noose. Recordings can be faked. They can, but they can also be verified. And once the sheriff starts investigating Sarah's death, once he starts asking questions, how long do you think your story holds up?" Clara's voice went cold. "You were seen in the area that day. Multiple witnesses. You had motive. You had opportunity. And now you have a confession on record. Even a bad lawyer could convict you." Cargill's jaw tightened. His hand moved toward his own pistol. Caleb moved faster, had his gun drawn and aimed before Cargill's fingers touched metal. "Don't," Caleb said quietly. "Please don't. I've wanted a reason to kill you for 3 years. Don't give me one now." The three of them stood in a triangle of tension. Caleb with his gun drawn, Cargill calculating odds, Clara standing between them unarmed but unafraid. "You really want to know the truth?" Cargill's voice had changed. The smoothness was gone. Something raw and broken had surfaced beneath. You really want to know why I killed Sarah? Why I'm here destroying your life? I know why, Caleb said. Because I left you to take the fall in Montana. Because I took the money and ran. No, that's not why, Cargill laughed, a sound like breaking glass. That's what I told myself. But the truth is simpler and so much worse. He looked at Caleb with eyes that held too much pain for hatred alone. Marcus Trent, the man I killed, the man you let me kill. He wasn't just some random homesteader. He was my father. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of understanding spreading outward. Caleb's gun hand wavered. What, my father, Marcus Cargill Trent, changed his name after he left my mother, after he abandoned us, after he raped your sister and destroyed her life and yours. Cargill's voice cracked. I didn't know. When we took that job, when we rode out to terrorize him, I didn't know he was my father. Not until I saw his face. Not until he looked at me, and I saw my own eyes looking back. William, I killed him for you. Killed my own father because of what he'd done to your family, because you were my friend, my partner, the only person who'd ever treated me like I mattered. Cargill's composure was crumbling. And you left me. Took the money. Let me rot in prison. Made me nothing. Again. Clara saw it then, saw the truth beneath the revenge. This was not about money, not about the ranch, not even about Sarah, though her death was real. This was about a man who had killed his own father for someone he loved and been abandoned for his loyalty. Sarah was collateral, Cargill continued. She was in the way. She was yours. She was good and pure and everything I could never have. So I took her from you the way you took everything from me. I didn't know, Caleb's voice was hollow. About your father, about Marcus being your father, you never told me. Would it have mattered? Would you have stayed, or would you still have run west with the blood money, leaving me to explain why I shot my own father in cold blood? Silence, heavy with truths that changed nothing and everything. Clara moved then, walked to Cargill, stood close enough to see the tears on his face, close enough to see the broken boy beneath the polished monster. You're right, she said quietly. Caleb wronged you, left you to carry a burden alone. That was unforgivable. Cargill looked at her, surprised. But killing Sarah didn't balance those scales. It just added more weight, more death, more pain. You became the thing you hated. You became Marcus, the man who destroys innocent people because he's been destroyed himself. I'm nothing like him. You're exactly like him. You hurt a woman who had done nothing to you. You're threatening to hurt me, to hurt Ghost. All because you can't accept that pain doesn't justify causing more pain. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I lost a daughter. My husband blamed me for her death. My sister used my grief as a weapon. I have every reason to be exactly like you, bitter, vengeful, determined to make the world hurt as much as I hurt. Clara's voice softened. But I chose differently. I chose to carry my ghosts without becoming one. You can make that choice too. It's too late. It's not. Come down from this ridge, face the law, confess everything. Sarah's death. The real story of Montana. All of it. The truth will destroy you, but lies already have. At least truth offers the possibility of redemption. Cargill looked at her for a long moment, then at Caleb, then at the ridge where Sarah had died. I loved you, he said to Caleb, like a brother, maybe more, and you threw me away like I was nothing. I know, Caleb lowered his gun, and I'm sorry. I was a coward. I ran from everything, from the war, from my sister's death, from what we did in Montana. I built this ranch on cowardice and blood money and lies. You're right about all of it. Then give me the ranch. It's the least you owe me. No. The word came from Clara. Both men turned to look at her. No, she repeated. You don't get the ranch. You don't get to profit from murder. You don't get to win by being the worst version of yourself. She walked to Ghost's makeshift corral, began untying the ropes. But you do get a choice. Confession and prison. Or running and hanging. Either way, you're done here. You can't prove anything. I have your recorded confession. I have Sarah's journal documenting your harassment. I have Dutch willing to testify about your plans. I have enough to hang you 3 times over. Clara freed the last rope. Ghost stumbled out, weak but free. The only question is whether you walk into Buffalo with us or whether we drag your body there. Cargill's hand moved toward his gun again. This time Clara was ready. She had picked up a rock while freeing Ghost. She threw it hard and accurate. It struck Cargill's hand. His gun fell, bounced skittered toward the edge of the ridge. He lunged for it. Ghost lunged faster. The white stallion, protecting his mate and offspring, hidden behind him, charged with the fury of every father who had ever defended his young. Teeth bared, hooves striking. No longer just a ghost defending a woman, but a living creature fighting for his family's survival. Cargill stumbled backward, toward the edge, toward the same drop that had killed Sarah. "William!" Caleb shouted. Cargill's arms pinwheeled. For one frozen moment, he hung suspended. Then gravity took him. He fell exactly as Sarah had fallen, down the rocky slope, tumbling, breaking. By the time he reached the bottom, he was not moving. Clara and Caleb stood at the edge, looked down at the broken body far below. Ghost stood beside Clara, trembling but calm, his head pressed against her shoulder. "Is he dead?" Clara asked. Caleb was quiet. Then, yes. They stood there for a long time. The wind moved across the ridge. The mountains held their ancient silence. Far below, William Cargill lay still, his revenge incomplete, his pain finally ended. "Was it murder?" Clara asked. "What Ghost did. It was defense, protection, justice." Caleb looked at her. "Or maybe it was just a horse spooked and angry, doing what horses do when they're frightened." "Which do we tell the sheriff?" "The truth. All of it. Sarah's journal, the recording, what happened here. Let the law decide." Clara nodded. She understood what Caleb was offering. Transparency, honesty. No more running. No more lies. Whatever consequences came, they would face them together. "We need to get the body," she said. "I know." It took 3 hours to climb down, retrieve Cargill's corpse, and bring it back up. Ghost carried the body, allowing the weight because Clara asked him to. By the time they reached the top, the sun was setting. They rode back to the ranch in darkness. Maggie met them in the yard, saw Cargill's body, and asked no questions, just helped them lay it out in the barn and covered it with canvas. Dutch appeared from the shadows. "The recording, we still need it," Clara said, "for the sheriff, to explain everything." Everything, everything. Then Chapter 13, the accounting. The sheriff came the next day. A weathered man named Brooks, who had seen enough death to recognize truth when he heard it. He listened to the recording, read Sarah's journal, heard testimony from Clara, Caleb, Dutch, and Maggie. Then he looked at Cargill's body and made his decision. Self-defense. Ghost was protecting Mrs. Dunn from a man who had already murdered once and was threatening to do it again. No charges. He looked at Caleb. "But Dunn, you need to answer for Montana, for leaving Cargill to take the fall. That's a different matter." "I know. I'll have to contact the Montana Territorial Authorities. Let them know you're here. Let them decide if they want to pursue charges." "I understand." Sheriff Brooks packed up his notes, took the recording and Sarah's journal as evidence. Before leaving, he turned back to Clara. "Mrs. Dunn, your husband is lucky to have you. Not many women would fight this hard for a man carrying this much baggage. I'm carrying my own baggage, Sheriff. We just carry it together now." He tipped his hat and rode away. That night, Clara and Caleb sat on the porch, not touching, just existing in the same space, waiting to see what consequences would emerge from truths finally told. "I might go to prison," Caleb said. "For Montana, for abandoning Cargill, for stealing the partnership money. I know. You should leave. Go back to Kansas. Start over somewhere clean." "No." "Clara, no." She turned to look at him. "I didn't come this far to run when things get difficult. I came here to escape ghosts. I found more ghosts, and I'm staying anyway." "Why?" "Because, for the first time in 4 years, I feel like I'm part of something real, something honest, even if it's broken and complicated and might end with you in prison. It's real, and I'm not giving that up." Caleb was quiet. Then, with a movement so slow it seemed to take forever, he reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, rough palm against rough palm, two people built from the same hard material. "If they send me to prison," he said, "the ranch is yours, all of it. Papers are already drawn up. You'll be taken care of. I don't want the ranch. I want you. You might not get both. Then I'll wait, however long it takes." They sat in silence. Stars emerged. The mountains went dark against a darkening sky. Ghost stood in his corral, head high watching them. Free now, unburdened, a ghost that had finally laid his dead to rest. 3 weeks later, word came from Montana. The territorial governor had reviewed the case. Cargill's confession to murdering his own father, combined with evidence that Marcus Trent was a known rapist, had complicated matters. The partnership money was considered restitution for Caleb's sister. No charges would be filed. Caleb Dunn was free. The news should have brought relief, joy. Instead, Caleb sat at the kitchen table, staring at the telegram, looking lost. "I don't understand," he said. "I committed crimes. I should pay for them." "You have paid for them, for 3 years, in guilt and isolation and fear." Clara sat across from him. "Maybe that's enough. Maybe the universe has decided you've suffered proportionally to your sins." "I don't believe in the universe having opinions." "Then believe in me having opinions, and my opinion is that you've punished yourself long enough." He looked at her. This woman who had crossed 5 states to marry him, who had tamed his ghosts and faced his devils and stood beside him when running would have been easier. "I don't know how to live without guilt," he said quietly. "It's been my companion so long, I don't know who I am without it." "Then we'll figure it out together, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time if necessary." "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. I don't deserve you either. We're both broken people who got lucky enough to break in compatible ways." Clara stood. "Come on. There's something we need to do." She led him outside to the place where they had buried Cargill 3 weeks earlier. A simple grave marked with a wooden cross. No name, just dates. "We need to forgive him," Clara said. "I can't." "Not for him, for us. We need to let go of what he did, let go of the revenge he wanted. Let go of the guilt and anger and pain, all of it. We need to bury it here with him and walk away lighter." Caleb stared at the grave, at the man who had killed his wife, who had loved him and hated him and died trying to destroy him. "I don't know how." "Neither do I, but we start by saying it out loud." Clara took his hand. "William Cargill, I forgive you for killing Sarah, for threatening me, for trying to destroy everything we built. I forgive you because holding on to hate is heavier than I can carry anymore." Caleb's jaw worked. His hand tightened on Clara's. When he spoke, his voice was rough with tears he refused to shed. "William, I forgive you for loving me, for killing for me, for hating me when I abandoned you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to stay." They stood at the grave until the sun set. Then they walked to Sarah's grave, the one with the painted white cross. Clara had brought wildflowers. She laid them on the mound of settled earth. "We need to forgive her too," Clara said. "Sarah didn't do anything wrong. She kept secrets, died with them, left you wondering and guilty and lost." Clara knelt beside the grave. "Sarah Dunn, I forgive you for being perfect, for being the ghost that haunted this house, for making it hard for me to find my own space here. And I thank you for loving Caleb, for loving Ghost, for leaving a journal that saved us both." Caleb knelt beside her, placed his hand on the grave marker. "Sarah, I forgive you for dying, for leaving me alone, for not trusting me enough to tell me the truth about Cargill. I forgive you, and I release you. You don't have to haunt this place anymore. You're free." Clara reached into her bag, pulled out Sarah's journal, the one with all her secrets. She opened it to the last entry, the one written the day she died. Then she tore out the pages, one by one, fed them to a small fire Caleb built, watched Sarah's words turn to ash and smoke and air. "She's free now," Clara said. "And so are we." They walked back to the house hand in hand. Behind them, the graves held their dead without demanding anything from the living. Chapter 14. The living. 6 months passed. Winter came to Wyoming territory. Snow fell on the mountains. The creek froze. The world went white and quiet and clean. Clara did not get pregnant. There was no miracle child. No symbolic rebirth. No fairy tale ending. Just 2 people learning to live with ghosts they no longer feared. One morning in January, Clara woke and realized something. She sat up in bed, her breath visible in the cold air, her heart beating faster. She had forgotten. Yesterday had been Emma's birthday. Her daughter would have been 8 years old, and Clara had forgotten. The realization should have devastated her, should have crushed her with guilt. Instead, she felt something else, something lighter. Release. She went downstairs, found Caleb in the kitchen making coffee. He had taken to waking early, to being present, to existing in the same space as her without walls between them. Caleb. He turned, saw her expression. What's wrong? Yesterday was Emma's birthday. I forgot. He set down the coffee pot, came to her, took her hands. Is that bad? I don't know. It feels like betrayal, like I'm letting her go, or like you're finally letting yourself live. He pulled her close. They had learned to touch now, slowly, carefully, but touch nonetheless. Emma wouldn't want you frozen in grief forever. How do you know? Because I finally understand that Sarah wouldn't have wanted that for me either. The dead don't need our suffering. They just need to be remembered. And you can remember Emma without bleeding for her every day. Clara leaned into him. This man who had been a stranger, who had become something more, not quite whole, but whole enough. I want to do something, she said, for Emma and for Sarah, something to honor them both. What? I want to make markers, real ones, headstones, with their names and dates and something that says they mattered. I'll help you carve them. They spent 3 weeks working on the stones, 2 pieces of granite hauled from the quarry in Buffalo. Caleb carved the letters with patient precision. Clara polished them smooth. For Sarah, beloved wife, beloved memory. Free at last. For Emma, beloved daughter. Forever 3, forever loved. They set the stones on a cold February morning. Maggie came to witness. Dutch came too. The 4 of them stood in the small cemetery breath, misting in frozen air. Say something, Maggie prompted. Clara looked at Emma's stone, at the daughter she had held while dying, at the ghost she had carried for 4 years. Thank you, she said simply, for teaching me that love doesn't end, for showing me that grief can transform instead of destroy, for being mine even for so short a time. Caleb placed his hand on Sarah's stone. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself, for saving me by dying, for leaving Ghost as a bridge to someone who could reach me when I'd forgotten how to be reached. They walked back to the house. Maggie and Dutch stayed for coffee. They talked about spring planting, about prices for cattle in Buffalo, about ordinary things, life things. After they left, Clara and Caleb stood in the yard, looking at the mountains, at the land they had nearly lost, at the corral where Ghost stood, watching them with eyes that no longer held wildness. I want to let him go, Clara said. Ghost, he's not ours. He never was. He belonged to Sarah, then to himself. We've been keeping him here out of guilt and fear and habit, but he should be free. Caleb considered this, then nodded. They walked to the corral together. Clara opened the gate. Ghost stood at the far fence, watching, waiting. You can go, Clara said. Anywhere you want. You're free. The horse walked to her, pressed his muzzle to her palm, one last time, warmth and breath and trust. Then he walked through the open gate, stood in the yard, testing the absence of barriers. Go on, Caleb said quietly. Run. Ghost looked at them both, at the humans who had loved him and fought for him and finally released him. Then he turned toward the mountains, began to walk, then trot, then run. His white coat gleamed against dark pines. His mane streamed behind him. He ran like the ghost he had always been, beautiful and wild and free. At the ridge he stopped, turned back. One last look at the ranch below, at the people who had saved him by letting him go. Then he disappeared over the ridge, into the wilderness, into legend. Clara felt tears on her face, not sad tears, just tears. The kind that come when something heavy finally lifts. Caleb put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. They stood together watching the empty ridge where a ghost had vanished. Do you think he'll be all right? Clara asked. I think ghosts are always all right. They're already dead, can't kill what's already gone. We're not dead anymore. No, we're not. They turned back toward the house. But before they reached it, Caleb stopped. Wait, we need to go back to the ridge. Why? The mare, the foal. We can't leave them up there alone. Clara had almost forgotten. In the chaos of Cargill's death and Ghost's freedom, she had forgotten about the gray mare and the white foal hidden in the rocks. They rode back as darkness fell, found the mare standing protective over her offspring. The foal was white as snow, maybe 3 months old, with Ghost's elegant head and Sarah's gentle eyes somehow captured in its features. Sarah bred him before she died, Clara whispered. She never knew. Caleb approached slowly. The mare allowed it. She was domesticated, probably stolen like Ghost had been. She recognized humans who meant no harm. The foal stumbled toward Caleb on unsteady legs, pushed its soft muzzle against his palm. "We keep them," Caleb said, voice thick. "The foal is Sarah's last gift, proof that even ghosts can create life." "What do we name her?" Caleb looked at the white foal, at this living promise that pain could transform into something beautiful. "Hope," he said. "We name her Hope." They led the mare and foal down the mountain carefully. By the time they reached the ranch, stars had emerged. The mare settled into Ghost's old stall. Hope nursed, then slept. Clara and Caleb stood watching the foal breathe, this fragile new life born from a ghost's love. "Ghost is free," Clara said, "but part of him stays, lives on, like Sarah, like Emma. The dead don't really leave, they just change forms." Hope twitched in her sleep, dreaming of running perhaps, of mountains and freedom and a white father she would never know but would always carry in her blood. Their house now, not Sarah's, not haunted, just a building where 2 people lived and worked and learned to be less broken every day. Inside, Clara made bread. Caleb cleaned his rifle. Normal things, married things, the kind of small domesticity that had once felt impossible. That night, lying in bed in what was finally her room and not Sarah's, Clara spoke into the darkness. "Caleb, yes, I love you." The words hung in the air. She had never said them before, had not been sure they were true until they emerged. Silence, long enough that she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Then his hand found hers under the blankets. "I love you too. Took me this long to recognize what it felt like." "What does it feel like?" "Like I'm terrified and grateful in equal measure. Like I want to protect you and be protected by you. Like I'd rather die than watch you leave." "I'm not leaving." "I know, that's the terrifying part. You stay even when leaving would be easier. Even when I give you every reason to go, you stay." "So do you. We're both idiots." "Probably, but we're idiots together." He laughed. That sound she had heard so rarely, low and rough and genuine. Then he pulled her close. They slept tangled together. 2 people carrying ghosts they no longer feared. 2 people who had chosen each other not despite their brokenness, but because of it. Outside, snow fell. The mountains stood silent, and somewhere in the wilderness a white horse ran free, no longer haunted by the woman who had loved him or the woman who had saved him. Just running, just being, just alive. Epilogue. Spring came. Clara planted a garden, larger than before, with flowers mixed among the vegetables, roses for Sarah, daisies for Emma, living things to honor the dead. Caleb rebuilt the south fence, fixed the barn roof, did the work of ranching with hands that no longer trembled from nightmares quite so often. They learned to be married. Not perfectly, not easily, but truly. Some nights Caleb still woke fighting invisible enemies. Clara held him until the war receded, until Wyoming returned, until he remembered where he was. Some days Clara still heard Emma's voice in empty rooms, still turned expecting to see a 3-year-old girl who would never grow older. Caleb sat with her on those days, said nothing, just existed beside her grief until it gentled. They were not healed. Healing suggested completion, an end to pain. They were simply living, carrying their ghosts differently, letting the weight distribute between 2 sets of shoulders instead of 1. Pearl never came back. She sent 1 letter, an apology wrapped in explanation. Clara read it once, then burned it. Some ghosts did not deserve space in her new life. Dutch stayed on at the ranch, more friend now than hired hand. He brought news from town, kept watch over the north pastures, never mentioned the weeks he had worked for Cargill. Some betrayals were better left unexamined. Maggie visited monthly, brought preserves and sharp observations and affection disguised as criticism. She had become something like family, the kind chosen rather than inherited. And sometimes on clear mornings, when the mountains were sharp against blue sky, Clara would see a flash of white on the distant ridges, too far to be certain, too perfect to be coincidence. Ghost, still running, still free, still alive. She never tried to call him back, never tried to reclaim what she had released. Some loves required distance. Some ghosts needed to remain wild. On a warm day in May, exactly 1 year after Clara had first arrived in Wyoming territory, she and Caleb rode to the cemetery. They brought flowers for both graves, sat on the grass between the two women who had shaped their lives. "Do you think they'd approve?" Clara asked. "Of us? Sarah would. She always wanted me to be happy, even when I couldn't figure out how. Emma would, too. She loved everyone, indiscriminately, joyfully." They sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that had taken a year to build. Then Caleb spoke. "I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple iron hand forged with a single small stone set in the band. "It's not much. Stone came from the ridge, the one where we found Ghost, where we faced Cargill. I wanted something that mattered more than gold." Clara took the ring, slid it onto her finger beside the plain band from their paper marriage. The two rings together, one from obligation, one from choice. "It's perfect." "You already had a ring." "That ring was for the marriage we had to have. This ring is for the marriage we chose." She looked at him. This man who had been a stranger, who had become her home. "Thank you." He kissed her then, gently, with the careful tenderness of someone still learning how to touch without fear. They rode back to the ranch as the sun set. The mountains turned purple and gold. The valley filled with shadow. Their house stood small and solid against the wilderness. Home, not because it was perfect, not because it was easy, but because it was theirs. Built from truth and pain and the stubborn refusal to let ghosts have the final word. That night, Clara stood at the window of her room, looking out at the corral where Ghost used to pace. Empty now, peaceful. She thought about the woman who had arrived here 1 year ago. Broken, desperate, certain she was already dead. That woman was gone, or transformed, or simply learned to carry her death differently. This woman, this Clara. She was not fixed, not whole, not freed from grief or guilt or the weight of choices that could not be unmade, but she was alive, truly alive, in ways that mattered more than merely breathing. She turned from the window, climbed into bed beside a man who knew her ghosts because he carried his own. They fit together in the darkness, two broken pieces that did not make one whole, but made something new, something honest, something real. Outside, the wind moved across the prairie. The stars wheeled overhead. The earth turned with its cargo of living and dead, broken and mending, haunted and free. Somewhere in the mountains, a white horse ran beneath moonlight. No longer anyone's ghost, no longer anyone's burden, just running, just alive, just free. And in a barn in the valley below, his daughter slept. Hope, white coat gleaming in lamplight, born from a ghost's love, proof that even the wildest hearts could leave tenderness behind. She breathed softly, dreaming of wide skies and mountains calling, dreaming of a white stallion she would never know but would always carry in her blood. Freedom and family, wild and home, ghost and hope. The living learning to carry the dead learning to let the living run free. That was the way. That had always been the way. The end.